Mitchell has his head up, takes LeVert. Oh, my! Donovan!
Get that weak stuff out of here!
Welcome to the Junkyard Pod. I'm your host, Tony Pesta, joined once again by my co-host, Jackson Flickinger. And just to provide an update on our third co-host, Corey Walsh, he is still very much alive. He's still kicking. He's still part of the pod. He's recently bought a new house and has a lot of other things going on. He's rooting for the Celtics, of course. As we all know, he's the biggest Boston Celtics fan. So Corey will be back when he's available. For now, you're stuck with me and Jackson. I actually want to start off by just tossing the ball to Jackson and letting him go ISO, because as a longtime supporter of a certain Sam Merrill, I think he has earned this victory lap. So Jackson, take the stage.
Thank you. And just to take the listeners behind the curtain here, Tony the other day was pitching me on ideas for segments for the pod, and I said, Tony, why don't we do the Sam Merrill minute? And Tony said, yeah, we'll do that. And then he never gave me the chance. So
we forgot.
But he keeps doing these tweets of the week, so it's not like he's not listening. And this week, it's a truly awful tweet. So keep that in mind. You have that to look forward to. So, anyways, so the biggest thing about the Sam Merrill thing is that it really showed me that nobody values my basketball takes, because I have been telling you guys that Sam Merrill is good at basketball for a while, and then people were just like, yeah, whatever. And every time he got into the game or made 1-3 in like a couple minutes, people would just text me and say, oh, you must be so happy. You must be a proud dad. And it's like, well, I'm happy because everyone likes to be validated, but it's like, he's just good at basketball. Like, he does good basketball things, and when he plays, he does more good basketball things. He's somebody who's just needed a chance to show what he can do on a consistent basis, and he's never gotten that. And now that he's getting that, you can see what he can do. Like any shooter, some nights the ball's not going to be going in. We saw that with Kyle Korver. You'd get Kyle Korver games, and then the next game he'd go, 0 for 6, and he'd spend more time on the bench than not. And that's kind of how Sam Merrill is. When he was with the Charge, those games he would just stay out there and still do other things besides shoot. But with the Cavs, he's not going to, get extended run during those minutes. But when he has it going, he's an absolute game changer. And that's what we saw. We saw that in overtime against the Hawks, where he broke the game open and then also just made things so open for everybody else. And then, his 27 points against the Jazz, that's like, when he has it going, that's the type of game that he can have, because he's an absolutely lethal shooter.
Money Merrill is as legit as it gets. Right now, well, prior to yesterday's game, he was shooting a team high 45%. Now Isaiah Mobley has taken that crown because he made a three-pointer last night and he's 1 for 2. So technically he's shooting 50%, but for all intents and purposes, Sam Merrill is leading the team with a 45% clip from downtown. He's shooting 47% on catch and shoot three-pointers, which is the 10th best in the NBA for a minimum of 50 attempts. He's also 8th out of 200 NBA players to attempt 63 pointers or more. He's 8th in percentage. So there's no doubt about it that he can shoot the ball. I think, every other Cavs fan might have been surprised to see Sam Merrill take the stage, but Jackson wasn't, because Jackson has been calling this for at least a year now. He saw it. This was just part of the vision for Jackson. And so you definitely deserve the victory lap there. But Sam Merrill, his gravity just creates openings. We saw it in the Utah game. There was a couple plays. I know Tristan Thompson got a wide open dunk just because 2 Jazz players jumped out to guard Sam Merrill. I believe Caris LeVert got a wide open 3 through the same type of play. And he's a smart basketball player. Not only is he a great 3-point shooter, but he knows how to use his gravity as a weapon to open up things for other people. And even on the defensive end, he's smart enough to stay in position and not really get put into these weird situations where he's getting punished for his lack of size or athleticism. He's just a smart basketball player, and that's why he's able to be an impactful guy during this stretch where the Cavs really need someone to step up.
So one of the things that I think is really interesting is that, like, I feel like everyone goes on, like, everyone who sees Sam Merrill play a lot of basketball, they kind of go through this, like, cycle. So, like, when I first started, he came to the Charge at the beginning of last year. He was the number 1 pick in the G League draft. And the G League's weird. So, like, the G League draft works basically like guys who get cut at the end of training camp, they enter, like, this pool. And the Charge had the first pick because they were truly awful the year before, and they selected Sam Merrill. So, like, I didn't know anything about Sam Merrill before he came to the Charge. I knew that he was the last cut for the Kings. Mike Brown decided to go with Matthew Dellavedova instead, which is a very Mike Brown thing to do. But, like, so I didn't know anything about him, and when you first watch him play, you're like, when you first see him on the court, you're like, okay, he's just like the typical shooter. He's just going to do, like, shooter things. He's going to space the floor. He's going to get taken advantage of on defense because he's not, like, the biggest guy. He's not the fastest guy. He probably can't really, like, take it to the basket. And then you're like, okay, well, like, the shooting is real. And then you see the movement and you're like, well, he gets it off so quick, but he just has it going tonight. And then the more you see him, the more you see that, like, even when he doesn't, like, have it going for, like, a 27-point night, he's still, like, I think the game against the Trailblazers was a good example of this. And Donovan Mitchell talked about afterwards how mad Sam was because he missed his first couple shots. He's somebody who he can come in, not really like miss a couple shots, and then, like, it can just start to snowball. So that first quarter against the Hawks. Sorry, I was just blanking on the name of the team. The first quarter against the Hawks, like, he missed his first 2 threes. It looked like, okay, well, he doesn't have it going tonight. And then the beginning of the second quarter, he hits 3 threes in, like, 3 minutes. And then that's, like, 9 points that just kind of changes the momentum of a game. And that's the type of player that he is, that he's somebody who needs to be in a rhythm, and once he gets into that rhythm, he can just change the game. There were so many games with the Charge where he'd finish with 17 points and he'd have, 12 of them within, like, a 2-minute span. And those 12 points, those 4 threes, just absolutely changed the game. And then after that, the defense is just overreacting to every movement that he makes, which just makes it so much easier for everybody else to play. I really want to see him play when the Cavs have both of their centers. Like, I want to see him. It's great to see him. You talked about Tristan getting a wide open dunk there. I'd like to see him play in second unit lineups with Mobley or Allen, where, there's a couple times where Tristan got it on the roll and, like, the defense shifted over to kind of contest him at the rim, and Tristan is not really an above the rim finisher. But, like, if you have Allen, if you have Mobley, those late contests, they're finishing through that or drawing fouls. So, like, I just want to see Sam play with a more complete team, and I want to see him keep getting those minutes and runs, because sometimes he's just not going to have it. You play him for 4 or 5 straight minutes, he just doesn't have it. It's not worth keeping going down that road. But it's like, when he does have it, or when you kind of sense that little spark that he's going to provide, it's like, keep him out there. He's not taking, like, he's putting more on the table than he's taking off.
I do want to go back to that point you made about Merrill building a rhythm, because I think you really saw that in the Utah game, where he had 5 3-pointers in the first, like, 12 minutes in that game of his playing time. And it starts off with, wide open catch and shoot corner 3, which I haven't checked recently, but I know he was shooting 60% on corner 3s to start the year. It's very low volume, of course, but he's just a lights out shooter. And he hit, like, those first 2 easy shots, and then all of a sudden you see him pull one off the dribble with the defender right in his face. And it's like, when he builds that confidence, all of a sudden defenses recognize very quickly that, hey, this guy can shoot the ball. And that's why in the second half of that game, there were so many openings, because even something as simple as just slipping a screen and popping out to the 3-point line causes 2 defenders to go after him. Even if it's just a half second of indecision from the defense, that gives the other guys on this team the half step advantage they need to make something out of it. And so that's where a guy like Sam Merrill becomes very valuable. I do want to talk about the rotation. And so I think this is a good transition into our tweet of the week, because look,
No.
I'm the biggest Okoro fan that you know, okay? But this is a scorching hot take that burned my eyebrows off. So the take is, hot take or not, Okoro needs to be starting over Max Strus. The reasons: he gives us more playmaking, better defense, scoring inside the paint. Overall, will help you start the games out better. Now, like I said, I'm the biggest Okoro fan that's on earth, but I'm just going to say no to all of that. I think I've been pleased with the way Okoro has been playing. I do think he has been offering some playmaking, but I still think Max Strus gives you more of that. I think his two-man game with the bigs, even if it's just him and Allen, is very, very useful. And much like Sam Merrill, Max Strus uses his off-ball gravity in a way that is playmaking in a sense. He's creating plays for other people just by being out on the floor. And again, something as simple as setting a ghost screen and giving Donovan Mitchell a half-step advantage. Those are the things that Max Strus provides that Okoro just can't. So I already know how you feel about this, Jackson, but this is our tweet of the week. How is it a hot take to you?
Yeah. Yes, it is. And I kind of get like expecting more from Max Strus because Max Strus, like, he's not as good of a three-point shooter as you would hope that he is. If that makes sense. He's currently a 35% three-point shooter, which isn't, it's not like phenomenal, but he's somebody who does a lot of things well, and he has a very well-rounded game in a way that this tweeter doesn't truly see, I don't think, especially when you're talking about playmaking, because Strus is somebody who operates with the ball a lot more. Especially like Isaac, when he's operating with the ball, it's usually like quick cuts, and his playmaking is like, okay, the big stepped up, I'm going to dump it off to Allen. Whereas Strus is somebody who's actually can bring the ball,
pick and roll. Right,
he can bring the ball up the court, things like that. And his shooting is a lot more valuable. Like even yesterday, he was bad from three. He was like 2 for 10 or something like that. But still, it's like, that volume of threes is something that's really important for this team. Obviously, that volume is pretty high because there's no Sam Merrill, Garland, Mitchell, but it's like that still just kind of gets the offense flowing. So yeah, I mean, it's a bad take, but
it happens to the best of us. I do just want to take a very brief moment to say Okoro, I think, has been playing pretty well. In the 5 games since he's been starting, he's averaging, rounding up here, 13 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists on 58% shooting from the floor and 50% shooting from the three-point line. Of course, it's low volume. Of course, you still want to see, like, he's not going to be doing this when the team's fully healthy and everyone's available. It's going to be a way more limited role for him. But I think this is one of those moments where you get a little glimpse into what a normal developmental path could have been for Okoro had the team not accelerated the timeline so quickly. And at the very least, I think it's reassuring to see him continue to take these very small steps forward and show that there is a little bit of hope. There's still more that you need to see if he's ever going to be a true, like, a guy who you can put on the floor in the playoffs. But as one of the biggest Okoro fans, I've been glad to see him ramp up his usage a little bit here in the 5 games since the team has been decimated by injury.
I think this little stretch kind of just shows how, it more frustrates me than it does encourage me, if that makes sense, because he is playing good. He's getting his points and he gets his assists off of very specific spots on the floor and very specific moves. We kind of just talked about Max Strus kind of like a complete basketball player. Isaac Okoro is not a complete basketball player, but he has the skills to be a complete basketball player. And this is kind of the conversation that we keep having. It's he shoots this well from three. It's okay, well, he's shooting in one spot and he's only shooting he's only shooting catch and shoots mostly. He had that one little jab step missed 3 yesterday. But it's mostly just catch and shoot stuff. It's mostly his cuts are mostly coming corner, attacking closeouts, things like that. And it's I just want to see him play basketball. I want to see him operate above the break. I want to see him run a pick and roll. I want to see him do things like that. I don't know if he's just not good enough at basketball, if he's not if he doesn't have the confidence in himself to operate in those areas, if he's being told to just kind of specialize in these certain things, because it's like one of the things, especially with this Cavs defense, is I don't want to take anything away from Okoro's defense, but the way the Cavs play defense and the amount of overhelping that they do, they overhelp on every single drive. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you wall off your guy. Allen's still coming over. Mobley's still coming over. Everyone's still rotating. It's not like the Celtics who like, okay, let's like switch this. All right, like we trust you, Jaylen Brown, to have your guy, and we have everybody else. So like if you're playing the kind of defense the Cavs are, what's the difference between like Sam Merrill just kind of staying with his guy and getting blown by, and Isaac Okoro staying with his guy much better, but the defense is still rotating over? It just feels like they're not getting the most out of him on both ends of the court.
I actually do agree with that. On both ends of the floor. I think like one of the problems with their defense last year, and especially in the playoffs, with I know maybe Okoro wasn't fully healthy. I'm not sure exactly what happened there, but when you put Jetty out there and you're overhelping, it's like, I just feel like in that series, you could have put Okoro on Brunson and just said, hey, we trust you as a defender. Do your absolute best. We're going to mostly stay home. We're not going to overhelp because we need to focus on crashing the glass, defending the three-point line, whatever it may be. That was a trend that they did all last season, where even if Okoro was walling off his man, as you said, Allen's still coming over, Mobley's still coming over. You're seeing that happen with basically every player on this team. And so is it a coaching thing? Is it, I'm not really sure. And then on the offensive end, the same question can be asked. Is it a matter of Okoro's confidence that he only operates in these very specific roles, or is it coaching? I'd have to imagine it's maybe a mixture of both. When you look at other NBA teams and any like comparable player to Okoro, like those guys handle the ball still. They still get to run and pick and roll. They still get to dribble above the break. Even like Marcus Smart is someone who I could think of, like even in his earlier seasons, he would still shoot off the dribble 3-pointers. Like how many off the dribble 3-pointers has Okoro attempted from above the break in the last few seasons? I'm going to guess it's not very many. I do question, as much as I would like to see Okoro stay in Cleveland, I do question how much different and how much better potentially he could look in a different situation with a different roster around him and a different role. I'm not saying he would be an all-star by any means, but I think maybe his developmental path would make a little more sense than how it currently looks.
Do you want to guess how many shots Okoro has taken this year that either above the break, mid-range, anything that's not at the rim, or corner threes?
I'm going to say 15.
22.
Okay,
which is wild, because like that's what's frustrating, and that's where if he does go somewhere else, which somebody mentioned this today, that like with his little shoe deal, that like Isaac is very concerned about like money. I think like I don't think he's going to turn down like if, you know, let's say the Spurs offered him more money. I feel like he would go. Right, and that's not saying that he shouldn't. I'm just saying that like we could be in a situation where we could see him blossom elsewhere, and I really wouldn't be surprised because he has the skills.
Was that a potential Flickinger firebomb there, Okoro to the Spurs this summer?
That was not. I was just
breaking news. No,
you mentioned Jetty earlier. I have Jetty on my mind all the time. Just because he's gone doesn't mean he's forgotten. So you know,
I do have another Okoro question slated for later in the pod. But let's officially make this transition here to talk about the Cavs rotation, because I do think once this team is fully healthy, they have some interesting questions they need to address. So pulling up their minutes distribution here just so we can look at it as we talk. And the main question that I want to ask here is, who belongs in the 8 to 10 man rotation? Now, I think JB probably, he likes to run that 8-man rotation. I don't know if this is just a losing effort to say that I would like to see him expand it a little bit to 10. But if you were going to go 8 to 10 people deep, who do you play? I think for me, I'm almost convincing myself that you run the starting 5, you have Karis LeVert be the 6th man, and then for those next couple spots, I'd go smaller, maybe go Okoro, Sam Merrill, and then maybe you play Dean Wade and Tristan Thompson as your front court players. And like, this is kind of the question that I feel like I know where you're going to lean on this, but are we getting to the point where like, when this team's healthy, do Wade and Thompson deserve those minutes over Niang? Does he really belong in this rotation, especially as you get closer to crunch time? I'm interested to hear what you think this rotation should look like.
If it was up to me, I would have the Cavs go small, like entirely small. So like I would like when fully healthy, I think you can really only go 8 guys comfortably with the amount of minutes that your top 4 get. And I would probably just go like your starting 5 and then LeVert, Isaac, and then depending on the game, I'd probably go Dean Wade. Yeah, depending on the matchup. Just because it's like if it's a bigger team and you kind of need a little bit more than Dean, but like I wouldn't give either a really long leash because I feel like you know pretty quickly like, okay, this isn't a Dean Wade game. Or like this isn't a game where Dean Wade feels like he really can shoot the ball or like is confident in his shot enough to kind of take shots when guys are closing out on him. You know, for like Sam Merrill, if you play him for 5 minutes and you're just not seeing it, it's like, okay, put in Dean Wade because Dean Wade's providing something else.
I agree. And also I want to just to your point that you were making, I think you could even throw Okoro in there just because like Sam and Dean are 3-point shooters. Rhythm is very important for a player like that. Okoro is the kind of guy you could just put in, like it doesn't even play in the first half, put him in the third quarter, and you're basically fine. He's going to go in there and play hard, play defense.
Right.
Of course, you want him to be able to knock down the open shots, but I think that's a potential advantage you could have if you have Okoro in your rotation. But go ahead, continue.
Yeah, I just think that like this team has a bunch of guys who are specialists and not exactly like great. You know, like you don't have a bunch of guys who are like, you can't keep player X off the court. You know, like it's not like, you know, we've talked about Isaac, but it's not like he's like, yeah, you can't keep him off the court. And like even Caris LeVert is not somebody where you're like, well, you just can't keep him off the court because he's so good. And it's like, if you don't have those guys, then it's like, but you have depth pieces. It's like, why don't you roll them out there? And even if it was like a matchup where you're like, we need somebody bigger out there and like Dean Wade doesn't have it, throw Niang out there, like have quick, you know, like have tight leashes with these guys because there is enough guys out there like where you can do that. So that's kind of what I hope to see. And I know that in like the regular season, JB really tries to keep it like, he tries to keep things as predictable as possible. And I know that guys like appreciate the straightforward approach, but I think that really came back to bite him in the playoffs because you saw like I forget what it was. It was like that Jetty Osman with the top 4 players had only played like 40 possessions or something like that all season. It's very small. And
when it came time to adjust, it was too late. They didn't have the reps under their belt to be able to do that.
Like literally they hardly ever played together. So it's like, I would like to see varied lineups and stuff like that and varied, like, let's see how this all works together. Like, oh, maybe if you put, you know, Mitchell, Garland, and Merrill together, maybe that just opens up everything entirely for that group. Maybe you get Garland moving more, you get Mitchell moving more off ball. You know, like
the Max Strus effect times 10 almost, because Strus is, as you said earlier, not as good of a 3-point shooter as you kind of feel. I don't want to get too high on Sam Merrill off the jump here, but like maybe you put Sam Merrill in there and it really does open the floor the way that you wanted Strus to.
Right, yeah, and it's very different because like
Strus adds a lot more to it.
Max Strus is a very well-rounded player, and like we talk about Merrill being well-rounded, but we mean like he's well-rounded enough that when his shots fall, he can play because like he's one of the his shot difficulty. He's one of the best shooters alive. It's just that if he was 6'7", like Kyle Korver, he would be a very useful player, but he's not 6'7".
Yeah, I agree. I think this is the time to experiment, especially with all these injuries. You got to start getting creative here. And I think JB has done a decent job of that. I think everyone has gotten a crack at the rotation here. We'll see how that continues as the team gets healthy. I do want to give a quick shout out to Dean Wade, 13 of 21 from downtown over his last 4 games. I would say this is the most confident I've seen him in a very long time, maybe ever. As always, you never want to get too high on Dean Wade because you just never know. But if he really does kind of settle into this consistent rhythm and he can, you know, space the floor, pop out, hit those threes, he's one of their only switchable defenders. That would be huge for this team. And I do want to just ask this question because it's something that I was thinking about. As much as I, you know, try to defend Niang, if it was a playoff series again, would you give Tristan minutes over him? I think I might at this point. Tristan has been very impactful, and he obviously brings a completely different skill set, but I was just thinking, like, if it comes down to it, we need a backup big. in the playoffs, is he going to turn to Niang, or would I rather just have Tristan out there trying to grab rebounds? I know this is a very pointless question to ask, but I just think it's kind of a weird, fun dilemma.
This isn't a question to ask me because I'm just
I know where you're.
I'm not the biggest Niang fan, and I think his shooting is very valuable and stuff, and I think he does provide some things on the offensive end, but like I don't really view him as a stretch four in the way that like you would view like a Channing Frye or Kevin Love, just because he's not providing that rebounding and he's not providing a lot of like size or anything inside. So like obviously like Channing Frye wasn't a matchup for every series because he had limitations, but like he has way less limitations just because he still was a big body, whereas like Niang is just
Niang's a big body.
He's a big body, but he doesn't get rebounds like he's a big body. So
you're telling me this guy doesn't have a big body throwing it around?
You know what? That is a poor word choice. What was that shot attempt?
This is a very graceful basketball player. That's a great drive.
There's 17 seconds on the shot clock.
Yeah, that's been the problem with Niang, is just I feel like he rushes his shot. And the whole reason I brought up that Tristan question is because when you think back to the offseason, I think it's just, if you told me that I would even be questioning, are we going to play Tristan Thompson in the playoff series over George Niang? I would have been like, no way. Now I think it's kind of, maybe you won't play either of them in a playoff series, right?
I don't think you would play either unless things went bad. Like if you were playing the Knicks again from last year, you would throw Tristan Thompson in the game and say, please, Tristan.
Yeah, he would have been great.
Help us.
I just thought that was a funny thought that crossed my mind. And hey, you know what? If you do like George Niang, like our favorite Twitter user, Niang Muse, vote George Niang. I do want to move ahead. And since we're talking about the rotation, I do want to mention Ricky Rubio. There's a report here recently. So Rubio's been away from the team, focusing on his mental health. And it sounds like the Cavs and Rubio are having discussions and trying to figure out a way to potentially move on. It looks like Rubio is considering ending his basketball career. So I do just want to take a very brief moment to say, Ricky Rubio, hell of a career. He brought a lot of joy to the basketball world, especially to Cavs fans. That season 2021-22, he really delivered some of the best moments that we've seen in a long time for the Cavs. So I'm wishing him nothing but the best, and I hope that whatever he chooses to do after basketball brings him nothing but joy and happiness.
One of the things that's crazy when you talk about Rubio is it seems like he's somebody who, he played for multiple years for the Cavs and he was great. He only played from the beginning of the season to about right now. So like he only played we're just over like a third of the way through the season, something like that. So I think that just kind of shows like how big of an impact he made in his time and just how important he was to like changing the view of this team. So, thank you for all of that, Ricky Rubio. That's great. And we hope that this gets resolved in a way that's best for everyone.
Now let's move into our last topic here. And since we are coming down, I can't believe 2023 is already almost over. Figured why not talk about 2024? I'm not sure if we'll have another pod before the new year or not. So I figured why not? Let's talk about the upcoming year and what to really expect. So there's a couple things here that we want to discuss. First off, let's take a look at the standings. The Cavs right now, 16-13. They're a game back from the 4 seed, which if we're setting expectations for what we want to see in 2024, I want to see them get into that 4 or 5 matchup. Do you think they can avoid the play-in? Let's start there.
I think they can. Like their schedule's gonna lighten up some. They need Donovan Mitchell back. So whatever illness he has, that needs to stop. But provided that they do get Donovan Mitchell back soon, I think they have a good chance of at least being in the 4 or 5. They can't get to the 3 anymore, which I think was a goal. I mean, we thought that they could be one of the top seeds.
1 seed.
Yeah. Well, we didn't see the Celtics playing like this. I mean,
when we made those predictions, I don't even think they had made the Jrue Holiday trade yet. So yeah, but I think like they should be able to avoid that at the very least, get the 6 seed. And I think if you got the 4 or 5, obviously last year they were the 4 seed and they just got run off the court.
But if you get the 4-5 matchup,
still a favorable position.
You should have a chance to win. If you're in the play-in, you are not going to win in the first round.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, if you're matching up against Boston or Milwaukee in the first round, maybe you get lucky and one of those teams are dealing with injuries, then the door opens up. But that's not ideal. Even the Sixers at the 3rd seed, if you're the 6th seed, that would be a very tough matchup for the Cavs. Getting into that 4-5, I think it's very realistic. I wouldn't guarantee it, but I think it should be their goal right now, especially if you get to that 4 seed, home court advantage. Again, of course, obviously it didn't work out last year, but that's a good position to be in. I will note that the Magic, hold on, I had it up here real quick. They are 2-6 over their last eight games. They've been dealing with a little bit of injuries and some, difficult schedule, but it's possible that maybe they're going to be one of those teams where in like November, you're like, oh my God, the Magic are so good. And then you look back and it's like, oh, they're a play-in team. So we'll see if maybe they come back down to earth. I do think the Magic are a pretty fun team though. So I'm not hating on the Magic. I'm just saying maybe the Cavs will be able to sneak in there.
I think it's a pretty there's a lot of bums in this conference, for lack of a better way of saying it. Like, after you get past the first 3, you're looking at the Magic, who are an unproven team, and I think they still need, they remind me of the Cavs from 2021.
Yeah, 2021.
Like we said. And, the Knicks, the Mitchell Robinson injury just happened.
Yeah.
They're a team that relies on everybody. The Heat, they do not care about this regular season. And then you have the Cavs. And then you have the Pacers, who have the worst defense ever constructed. And then you have the Nets, which I don't trust at all. And then you have the Hawks, which have the 2nd worst defense ever constructed, but they don't have the best offense. So it's and then nobody past the Hawks is filled
they're
in.
Not even. That's why I didn't even. That's why I cropped them out.
Right. So it's you're getting the Cavs haven't played the Wizards yet. They haven't played the Hornets yet. It's
yeah, the Cavs have one of the top 5 easiest schedules remaining.
The Bulls are playing a little better, so I honestly wouldn't be shocked if they lost on Saturday. The Bulls are playing better, but it's there's not a lot of good teams there, and I think we were kind of expecting the conference to be just a little deeper. So it's there's a huge opportunity if the Cavs just kind of stabilize some. Even if they were to go 500 until Garland came back.
That's all you need.
They would be in perfect position to start rattling off wins. So I'm not before the season, we were very bullish on the regular season chances. I'm not bullish on the regular season chances, but if they didn't get the 4-5, I think I'd be pretty disappointed.
Yeah.
So
I think, our goal really, and you mentioned this on the last pod, we were basically hey, the regular season doesn't matter for this team. I think we were expecting it to be a little more easygoing than it has been, but really all of our focus was on the playoffs. I think if I remember correctly, we all had basically the same goal of they need to either win a playoff series or be very competitive in the playoffs. You kind of need to see that this team has somewhere to go. There's somewhere to go up from here. So just looking at this just for fun, you look at the Magic, the Knicks, the Heat. If they get into that 4-5 matchup, who do you see them having the easiest time beating?
I'm going to take this in a little bit different direction.
Okay.
Maybe not the best chance, but I think the Sixers are low-key a pretty decent matchup for the Cavs. Just because the Cavs have 2 guys they can throw on Embiid. They can absorb fouls against him, and they don't you're getting into playoffs. And one of the things that we see in the playoffs with Embiid is that they don't give him the same whistle that they do in the regular season. So I think that they're a team that, if the Cavs matched up against them, I wouldn't be oh, the Cavs don't have a chance. If they went up against the Bucks or Celtics today, I wouldn't really like their chances. But in that matchup, I'd be this could do something. So
I'm with you there.
So I'd rather them play the Pacers, or the Magic. I think that would be much better. But I think I would go, if I had to rank, I would go Magic and then Knicks, just because that Mitchell Robinson, would be a game changer if he's not able to go. And then the Heat, just because
they just have another gear for some reason every year.
Jimmy Butler has another gear, and I just don't like the small backcourt going against an Eric Spoelstra team.
Ooh. Mm-hmm.
And then you have a small backcourt and you have a pretty not skilled front court. So it just seems like something that Eric Spoelstra would just put him in hell. So like I would rather not see that. So I think the Cavs are obviously, if you play in the regular season, I'm not too concerned about a regular season matchup, but like the playoffs, I'd rather not see that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with everything you said there. The last thing that I want to hit on very quickly, just because it's fun, everyone loves to hear about it. The deadline's coming up in February. Do we think any move gets made? Could it be, this is the Okoro question I wanted to add, could it be Okoro continues this kind of hot streak, if you want to call it that, and gives himself some sort of trade value? Do they move from him? Do they move LeVert? I think, as I've said a few times, I'm sure on this pod, the biggest move that I could realistically see them making would be moving Jarrett Allen, but I don't think that's going to happen. I wouldn't be surprised if they try to shake this supporting cast up a little bit, but is there any move out there? You don't have to give me a specific target, but just looking at this bench or even one of the bigger names, do you think the Cavs get active on the deadline, or do they kind of sit put again?
I think they're going to try to do something with that contract for Rubio that they have. I think they're going to try to do something, but I don't know if they're going to do anything major. You can convince me that somebody has something for Okoro that they want, just because he's somebody that I think they could move. Whereas, like, you know, where maybe they get something back, like a better ball handler or something like that, that allows LeVert to play more off ball. Like the biggest problem we talked about this all last year. The Cavs should trade Caris LeVert. What do you need for a Caris LeVert trade? Well, you need a better Caris LeVert. And who wants to give up a better Caris LeVert for Caris LeVert? So those are kind of like the ways it could go. I don't think you can't trade Jarrett Allen this season just because you don't have any depth in the front court. We just talked about Tristan Thompson. Like, and
with the Mobley injury, if you move Allen and you're not sure Mobley's available, that's just a death sentence.
So I think it's a lot easier to reconfigure everything in the offseason. Like, I think they should have gone out ahead of, like, if you're going to move off from JB, do it in the offseason. If you're going to break up the Mobley-Allen pairing, do it in the offseason. Don't, like, give yourself as much of a runway as possible with Mitchell to try to make it work. But they didn't do that. So then it's like, I don't think doing it in February is going to change anything. So
yeah, I'm with you. And if I recall, that Yahoo Sports story that came out recently suggested that the Cavs are still very confident in the core that they have. I think even JB's job was reported to be pretty much safe for now. Seems like they're going to roll the dice this season. And, you know, I still think there's a reality where they play above 500 basketball. You get Garland and Mobley back February, March, give them enough of a runway to ramp up for the playoffs. Maybe you're in that 4-5 matchup. Maybe you're facing the Magic, and you manage to get a first-round series win.
One thing I will say is that if the Cavs were to trade Jarrett Allen, I do think the Pelicans are kind of the team that he would go to.
They're the team that you keep hearing about.
And I think there's a reason why. And, like, yesterday, before the game, David Griffin was there. So shout out to him. But he was there and just talking with Kobe for like an hour before the game, like for an hour.
Something up.
So like they're good friends and stuff like that. And like after the game, Griffin was walking through the Cavs locker room and stuff. So like not saying that like, oh, that means a trade's coming, but more so like they have a really good relationship. And when you have a really good relationship with somebody, it's a lot easier to kind of like make these deals work. There's always an open dialogue where something could get done.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think they make any major moves at the deadline. I would expect, if anything happens, to be in the offseason. If I had a wish list, and I'm sure that we're going to talk more as we get closer to the deadline, I'm kind of back on the move LeVert train. I do think if there was a move you can make,
the resurgence is over.
it might be. But, you know, you run into the same problem every time that you just mentioned. It's like, well, who do you get back for him? So I'm sure we'll talk more about that as we move through January and February.
It also hurts that Craig Porter Jr. has looked like a rookie recently because they need a backup point guard. And LeVert, this is probably a topic for another day, but like LeVert not taking...
I don't like backup point guard LeVert.
No, and I don't like... He was in a good role last year, and that role just isn't there anymore. I don't know. And it's not like they had a backup point guard they trusted last year. So it wasn't like.
And the Ty Jerome injury doesn't help. I don't know exactly where I stand on Ty Jerome, but that's an avenue that you haven't been able to explore. That people. It seemed like the Cavs were really thrilled with the way he was playing in training camp. Which, I mean, you hear that every year about the various players. The Dylan Windler special, but like if Ty Jerome was healthy and available and he was playing good, it makes moving away from Karis LeVert a lot easier, because then now you don't need to replace LeVert with LeVert. You can replace him with something else. But these are questions that probably get addressed in the upcoming offseason, as we both said.
Maybe the Bulls just absolutely love Isaac Okoro. They said, we want to pair Patrick Williams with Patrick Williams light.
Give us Caruso, please.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Never
but
gonna
maybe,
happen, no.
maybe that's what they think.
Yeah.
Maybe on draft night, they were really going back and forth between the two, and they said, we'd do anything to get our hands on Isaac Okoro. Who knows?
We can only hope. That's going to do it for this episode of the Junkyard Pod. I want to wish everyone a happy holidays. I want to say thank you to everyone who watches and listens to the podcast. We really do appreciate it. Please consider subscribing, and go Cavs.
I agree. Go Cavs. Brian, feel free to correct us.